You know, it's been said that K-State would never beat Nebraska. It was unthinkable, unimaginable. It's been 29 years that K-State has have to watch the Red fans go home with a win. Well, today the color of choice is purple as K-State has beaten Nebraska for the first time in Manhattan since 1959. And it is party time in Manhattan.
Prior to becoming the voice of the Huskers in 2008, Greg Sharpe worked in television at WIBW TV for 22 years. He was the voice of the Kansas State Wildcats from 1996 to 2002, was also the host of 580 Sports Talk, or Sports Sanity, as it was known at the time, until becoming the voice of the Huskers. And, of course, we all here at 580 WIBW send our deepest sympathies to his wife, Amy, his 3 daughters, his extended family, and everyone else who knew him or felt like they did over the years of listening to Greg Sharpe on the radio and on these airwaves and elsewhere. And joining us this afternoon to open the show and to help us remember Greg Sharpe was a member of that broadcast crew from the K-State broadcast team and WIBW in the late 90s, along with Greg Sharpe. Greg Akagi is in the studio today with us. And Greg Sharpe was the voice of K-State from 1996 to 2002, and that's kind of the golden era. And so it's a line on his resume that some of the greatest years, maybe the greatest years of K-State football, Greg Sharpe was behind the mic for all of those.
Yeah, without a doubt, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2001, those were unbelievable years, the greatest years for Kansas State football. I mean, you think of the names from that time period, 1, who are Hall of Famers, 2, who had careers in the NFL and successful careers in the NFL as well. We saw a brand of football that was pretty amazing to be able to do. And I had the privilege of being on the old Wildcats Sports Network crew with myself, with Stan Weber. The late Ed O'Donnell was our engineer. And then, of course, Greg Sharpe was the one that headed the way to so many great calls like the one in 98 against Nebraska that you heard earlier.
Yeah, had to be extra special for a K-State alum to get to be the voice of what was really a transformational time in K-State football history when they became such a national power. And even as he moved on to become the voice of the Huskers and was so well known in the state of Nebraska over the last 17 years as the voice of that team, he still bled purple. He was still a K-Stater at heart.
Oh yeah, I have people to this day who still remind me, hey, I miss you guys on the call for K-State football to be able to do. It's going to be the ultimate trivia question now, going to be the ultimate question 50 years later. Who was the very first Big 12 game? K-State and Texas Tech, August 31st, 1996. And it took a pass breakup at the end of the game, or near the end of the game, late in the fourth quarter, off of Zebby Lethbridge, and I think it was Lamar Chapman, if memory serves. And that was a great call, and we were all sitting there going, holy cow, what are we into here? And that was just the start of some great years.
What made Greg Sharpe a great broadcaster?
Several things. One, in this bit, and Dan, you've seen it, Brendan, you've seen it in this business, there comes a lot of it with egos that are in this business. Greg did not have one. He applied his craft. He was very good. He was unbelievably good at his craft, but he was also very humble and very one that was just level-headed throughout all that as well. And I think that's one of the things that I will always be impressed with him, because he was one of the best throughout the entire time frame, and that part of it was great to be able to do, but also very level-headed and one of the nicest people you will ever meet, because it wasn't an issue for him. If a younger broadcaster needed help on something, or, they said, hey, can you listen to my air checks? He was happy to do that. He got great teachings being under Mitch Holtis for as long as he was, as being on the crew for Mitch during the K-State broadcast as well. And, you think back 2 years, the very first 2 years that Mitch was the play-by-play for the Kansas City Chiefs, he continued to do K-State. And I think he figured out, no, I cannot keep going to K-State and then doing the Chiefs the next day type of schedule that he did. So that's when he was he left that, and Greg Sharpe was able to take over.
There's that window between 2002 and 2008 when Greg Sharpe is then no longer the voice of Kansas State. The media rights shifted, the landscape shifted a little bit. And there's that 6-year window where he's not doing the voice of a major Division I team. And for a lot of people in this industry, I know, and Greg, that could have been an embittering sort of experience, something that, frustrated you or made you bitter. But Greg kept working and producing outstanding work. He was the host of 580 Sports Talk here, and continued to do outstanding work. And when he got his opportunity in Nebraska, he became just as beloved there as he became in Manhattan.
Yeah, and what I always think was funny was, we had heard that, hey, because he actually took over for 3 games, the last 3 games in the 2007 regular season, because of some issues with the previous play-by-play announcer, incidentally a Kansan as well, that was the play-by-play. And I think Brendan will remember this, even though you weren't here in KU at the time. His very first game was at Lawrence at KU, and that was the game that KU absolutely obliterated Nebraska 76-39. I distinctly remember that game because it was any frustrations KU had for the last, as long as K-State had frustrations trying to beat Nebraska, not beating Nebraska, KU had the same thing, and they let them all out there. And that was Greg's first game, 76-39. KU just absolutely destroyed them.
Yeah, it's one of the most when it stopped being played, when Nebraska left for the Big Ten, it was one of the 3 most played rivalries in college football history. KU and Nebraska, they were in the Big 6 and 7 and 8 and 12 for forever. So I'm glad KU got that one in on Greg. I never got to know Sharpie, but everything that Jake has said, and everybody in the state of Kansas speaks so highly of him, and everyone in Nebraska speaks so highly of him, even if, they're not a Husker fan. They think, well, but I like Greg Sharpe. He does a good job, and he's a really nice guy. I'm glad that KU got the one big one on him early, so then he was able to take off in his great Husker career after that.
You know what's amazing, too? 76-39 was that final. And the next week, they played K-State. They beat them 73-31. And the week after that, it was the old Nebraska-Colorado rivalry.
That's right.
Rivalry game. And they lost that game 65-51. So, it was basketball game disguised as a football game.
Quite an opening, auspicious start.
Very auspicious
to his broadcast career at Nebraska, and one that again, over the course of his 17 years, there were many other great moments and memories, and of course the transition to the Big Ten Conference. He did baseball as well.
He did baseball.
A lot of great memories with Nebraska baseball through that time frame. And just last month, the press box at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln was named in his honor, and an inscription of one of his most memorable calls as the voice of the Huskers, the Hail Mary to Jordan Westerkamp from Ron Kellogg III that won the game against Northwestern. Back in, I believe it was 2014. That is now going to be forever immortalized next to that press box, and a great honor for somebody. And you both spoken to it, Brendan and Greg, that this was somebody who was as even a better regarded person than a broadcaster, and he was a very well regarded broadcaster.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. As well loved and still well loved as he is here in Kansas for K-State fans, for the Husker Nation, unbelievable love that they have shown him really throughout the entire time when he first announced on his Sports Nightly show. I think it's what that's called.
Yes.
That he'd been diagnosed with cancer. And this is just a health PSA right here. It's all because he had shoulder pain, and they wanted to check it out because it was pretty significant and bothersome. And, unfortunately, next thing you know, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, but fought it unbelievably valiantly and really open as far as, where he is and how much he is exposed to the public, but fought it very, very valiantly too.
And was able to broadcast 10 of the 12 regular season games for Nebraska football this fall, which was something that he was bound and determined to do, get in the booth for football, and he was able to do it. And a testament to what a fighter he was in the face of, pancreatic cancer is just an awful diagnosis. And he faced it with courage, and he faced it valiantly, and he fought it to the very, very end.
Just a real quick point about that. We've all called football games before, D2 football or high school games or what, semi-pro, whatever. And this is a little inside baseball here, but if you've never done it before, you don't realize how much energy goes into it. Like you two doing a high school game, partnered up in the booth, we're doing Seaman Shawnee Heights on a Friday night. By the time that game is over near 10 o'clock, you're pretty tired, right? Like you're pretty wiped out. I know I certainly am, and I expand a lot of energy doing high school or doing Washburn football. Greg was doing games at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln with hundreds of thousands of people listening to him, games that mean everything to people on that side of the Kansas-Nebraska state line, and was doing it while fighting cancer. Like it's hard if you haven't done it before to understand how much energy goes into it, and then how difficult that's got to be while you are also battling something so heinous like pancreatic cancer.
And there was, and I don't know the exact number of games when he wasn't able to come to the booth. They had it set up remotely where he could do the play-by-play in a studio to be able to do that. But still, okay, a little less emotion than that aspect of all the crowd that's there. But still, it's the exact same thing of what we need to do and what we're able to do too.
And not only did he do it, he did it well to the end, to the point where he was named the Nebraska Sportscaster of the Year by the National Sports Media Association this past year as well. Is also recently inducted into KAB, Kansas Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame, a Hall of Fame broadcaster and a Hall of Fame person. Yeah. Everyone who knew him is deeply, deeply saddened by his loss. And one of the neat things about this place, about this station, these call letters, this frequency, Greg, is that there's so much history here, and you're keenly aware of everyone who's come before you, and that's a legacy. The fingerprints that are on the torch that we carry every single day to make sports radio to make 580 Sports Talk. We think about Mitch, and we think about Greg Sharpe. We think about Jake LeBon. We think about Bruce Steinbrock, Mark Elliott, Ron Paradis, going all the way back to we don't call ourselves the sports voice of Kansas lightly. That's something that's been earned through the hard work of everybody who came before us. And so as people who, didn't work alongside him, we understand that his fingerprints are still on this place. And part of the reason why 580 Sports Talk and WIBW means so much to people in Kansas and sports fans in particular.
It's just, it's the memories of people will go back and they go to the 97 Fiesta Bowl where K-State beat Syracuse and Donovan McNabb. The 98 season not only for the Nebraska game, unfortunately, for the Texas A&M Big 12 championship game and the game against Purdue in the Alamo Bowl. 2 games I'll never forget, but 2 games I'd like to forget because there were 2 K-State losses. But 99 in the Holiday Bowl against Washington, the big drive late in the game, you go 2000. Again, Nebraska beating them at home. To be able to do that, it's just amazing to think about. And really, in the last week or this past weekend, and I was thinking a lot back to those memories of being able to do that, going on the bowl trips. We were able to do 96 Cotton Bowl, 97 Fiesta Bowl, 98 Holiday Bowl, 99 Alamo Bowl, 2000 back to the Cotton Bowl, 2001 Insight.com. Then it was the Insight.com Bowl down in Phoenix. To be able to do that and, to have the privilege of being on a crew with people like that, that was my honor to be able to do that too.
The thing about radio broadcasting, your reach is such that you never know how many people you're talking to when the mic goes live. And so Greg Sharpe maybe never fully could comprehend just how many people had listened to him, had considered him a companion and a friend over the years, who were rooting so hard for him in this fight against cancer, and who mourn his loss today after he passed on Friday after fighting so valiantly against pancreatic cancer. But I know a lot of those people are still listening to us here on 580 Sports Talk today. And Greg Akagi, thanks so much for stopping by and taking a few moments to share some memories of Greg Sharpe.
I just want to say one thing, too.
Yes.
To his wife, Amy, who's a dear friend of mine, and people know her. It used to be Amy Leitz here in town when she was a television anchor, but especially his daughters, the youngest, Taylor, who's still in high school, Campbell, and then Emily, who is going to get married this Saturday.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big goal of his, unfortunately. And as Amy has stated in some of her social media posts, he'll have the best seat in the house.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Greg Sharpe, one of the very best to ever put on a headset, and somebody who's very special to all of us here at 580 WIBW. Thank you again, Greg.
You bet.
We will take a timeout. We will come back. We got plenty of 580 Sports Talk to get into today. We're going to talk K-State hoops. We're going to talk to Matt Verderame of Sports Illustrated. Michael Swain of Fog.net's going to join us bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. So we are just getting revved up on this Tuesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. 327 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan and Brendan with you this afternoon. Thanks so much for being with us. We're rested, refreshed. We got a day off yesterday. We're back in the saddle. I hope you're rested and refreshed, Brendan.
My daughter got her 2-month vaccines yesterday. I am not rested.
No, you're not rested. Nope, you're not. Nope. Been there, brother.
We tried to get her to bed last night and just my wife often handles bedtime because she'll feed her and then, okay, I'll rock her to bed. We'll get her to sleep, whatever.
Yeah.
Last night it was not consistent. And I said, all right, I got her. Give me a shift. I'll take her for a couple hours.
You got to take shifts at that point. Sure.
I have no problem losing sleep to be a dad. Like and to let my wife get a little sleep, no problem at all. I did then wake up at 7:30 and thought, God dang it. Little sleepy.
Yeah, no, so people are talking about the YouTube live chat. We'll get to that in a second. But there is like illness just going around, illness in the air. It's a terrible cold, flu, COVID, norovirus season right now. And my wife and I were not spared. My wife got like the 24-hour bug on Saturday. So I was daddy in charge day. And I've been fighting. Anybody who listened to me Friday night doing high school basketball here on 580 WIBW can tell that my voice isn't 100%. So I've been fighting something, and we're just trying to make sure Asher doesn't get anything either. So, but yeah, Saturday was me and the kiddo, and kind of fending for ourselves while Abby recovered. And man, I woke up the next day, I had no physical strength. And part of that was I wasn't feeling well, but like otherwise, it was just like, man, like being in charge of a child wears you out. Like if you were the only one in charge, that is exhausting, especially, you're at the age Asher's at now where he's 8 months old. He's crawling all over the place. You can't just like let him explore. No, you have to make sure he's exploring appropriately.
Where'd you get a fork? Don't go by that outlet.
He doesn't get into that room. Oh, he started opening a drawer now and like doing rows with our towel drawer. So yeah, both arms. You got both arms going. So
one quick note too, aside from the dad stuff, calling a game while not feeling well, and I'm not trying to make it out like we have, we're linemen or anything over here. I had a cold a couple weeks ago, and I Washburn plays doubleheaders too, so it's a long night of basketball. You're on the air for 5-ish hours when those are going on, and you obviously have called countless doubleheaders in your day. When you're not feeling well, going into it, like the throat's a little scratchy, maybe a little tired, maybe some pressure behind the eyes, goes away when you're in the middle of it. Usually, like you're so in the zone, you've got the adrenaline going. Then you turn that microphone off for the last time, and I just want to pass out right there on the table. I know where you've been.
Yeah, no, that was Friday night was tough. Didn't have any kind of voice and could not get to the upper ends of the register. No question about that. But we're giving it our best here on this Tuesday. We thank you all for being with us. Hit us up on the text line, 785-272-9429. If you are watching live on YouTube on our channel 580 Sports Talk, jump in the live chat. We appreciate seeing our friends in there interacting with each other and with your hosts, and look forward to seeing more of you as we go on throughout the show today. Again, the channel is 580 Sports Talk. Matt Verderame, our NFL insider, is going to join us in just a bit, but I want to get into some K-State basketball. K-State going to the state of Utah has not been real fun so far. K-State football obviously had that nightmare in BYU, and now K-State goes 0 for the Beehive State, losing on Saturday night at BYU, and then last night losing a very winnable game to Utah, 64-59. I didn't think K-State was bad necessarily. I definitely think that the short turnaround on the road is a tough spot for every team that plays Saturday on the road and then has to play again Monday on the road, even if it is a short road trip. That turnaround's always a tough one, and K-State didn't have a lot of bounce, and you could see it, and it was reflected in the rebounding numbers, because K-State, not a great rebounding team as is, just got pummeled on the glass by Utah, and that was the reason Utah won that game. They didn't shoot it worth a darn. They were 3-19 from deep. Somehow, the worst free throw shooting team in the Big 12 made 23 of 30 free throws. Also, they shot 30 free throws. K-State shot 10. Interesting. But just didn't think they had quite as much juice. And I think that the foul trouble for Coleman Hawkins and David Gasson both really hurt both players. Because it's one thing, and I applaud Jerome Tang for this. I used to hate when Bruce Weber would do the 2-foul auto benching in the first half and just sit guys for the whole first half. It cost him a tournament game.
Yes, it did. Barry Brown.
It cost him that UC Irvine game in the NCAA tournament that one year because he sat Barry Brown for like 16 minutes in the first half. So
I'm mad all over again.
Yeah, no kidding. So I credit Jerome Tang for getting Gasson and Hawkins back in the game for stretches in that first half and playing them with 2 fouls and trusting veteran players in that spot. But it's not just you're playing and you have 2 fouls. It affects your rhythm. It affects your aggressiveness. It affects how you feel like you can play on the defensive end. And I think it was really affected both guys because Hawkins wasn't particularly good. Gasson wasn't as impactful as he usually is. And the recipe for K-State is their best guys have to be good. And that wasn't the case for them last night. And that's why they went 0 for Utah. And that's why their margin for error is just about 0 right now if they're going to make this thing happen for the NCAA tournament.
It happens so quickly, doesn't it? You go from, oh, shoot, they need 5 wins in 7 games, which is a lot. I mean, you got to win over 71% of your games. But 5 straight against teams in the bottom half of the Big 12 standings, even on the back end of a long road trip with a quick turnaround, that's doable. That, like, Utah, Arizona State, UCF, Colorado, this is doable. And then you lay an offense, you lay an egg in a game that you really couldn't afford to. I think there are even other teams on this. Like, you don't have to play well to beat Colorado. You know who we know? KU did not play well at all, like 2 weeks ago, and beat Colorado. You can do that. Even against Arizona State with how poorly they're coached, I think you can play an game and win. Utah, though, feeling itself after that KU game. And even though they didn't shoot, I mean, they played a confident game without playing well. And I think that was the difference. Not that K-State was unconfident, but like you said, you needed your stars to be better, and that was a game where you didn't get that because there's not a lot of depth behind the stars right now.
No, there's a lot more spring in Utah's step, and some of that is, again, it's a tough spot for K-State, but and some of it too is Utah's bigger than K-State. It's just about every position. But they're still, you can't give up 21 offensive rebounds or whatever the number ended up being, and all those second chances. And that was really the difference in the basketball game. It was the second chance points. It was the number of times they went to the free throw line. It was the fact that big doofus, Lawson Lovering, who can't make a free throw to save his life, all of a sudden shot him like Bob Cousy the entire first half. So that's an extremely dated reference. Holy cow, what a wash reference that is.
Bill Simmons ass comment.
But no, I thought that I thought that it wasn't to me that K-State was awful. It's just they weren't good enough, and you had to be better to go win that game. And now at least they've got the extra time to regroup before Arizona State comes to town on Saturday. And Joe Lunardi talked before the game. They had him on from his bracket bunker, and he seemed confident that K-State could like lose another game in this stretch and still get considered. But considered is one thing. It's just going to be really, really hard to crack the bubble if they don't win out from here.
I'm legitimately upset again about that 2019 UC Irvine game. Dude, UC Irvine, I remember this so vividly. They were the #1 picked upset on ESPN.com bracket challenge or whatever. The most picked upset of that entire first round of the tournament was UC Irvine over Big 12 champion Kansas State. And the thing about it was Irvine was not like, oh my God, this is like best mid-major ever. No, if Barry Brown just plays, a guy who averaged like 2.3 fouls a game, just plays past the auto bench in the first half, K-State probably wins that game going away.
There's like 5 more minutes.
Infuriate. Like, that probably should have been it for Weber in retrospect. Like, how do you mismanage that badly? All right, I'm done. Yeah. I'm going to keep getting mad if we keep talking.
Dean Wade didn't play either. It was the whole thing. But yeah, that was frustrating. Anyhow,
Stokes 4 of 12.
We're going to take a timeout. When we come back, Matt Verderame, our NFL insider, will join us. We're going to talk some early NFL free agency notes as we continue on this Tuesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. We are joined on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline by our NFL insider, Matt Verderame of Sports Illustrated, SI.com, also of his subscriber-only Patreon, The Matt Verderame Show, also of That Football Show on the KC Sports Network. You can hear him typically Mondays here on 580 Sports Talk. Gracious enough to join us on a Tuesday. Matt, let's get started with some early NFL free agent rumblings. Apparently, the Cincinnati Bengals want to keep all of their stars, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson. You would put the chances of this happening at blank percent.
I think that's great. Are they going to pay him? They're actually going to pay these guys? Because that's been the problem in Cincinnati for decades. They don't pay him. And so I would put it at, if we're talking all three, Hendrickson, Higgins, and Chase, 10%. I mean, look, I think they have to pay Jamar Chase. I have argued in Sports Illustrated that they shouldn't pay him. That I would take Chase. I would trade him for a fortune. I wrote a piece, I don't know, 2 months ago. I took a bunch of opinions from personnel men, GMs around the league, and asked, like, if they traded him, would they get more than Chiefs got for Tyreek Hill? Every single one of them said yes. Like, if I'm the Bengals, I'd sign Higgins, I'd trade Chase, I'd get a ton of picks, I'd rebuild that defense and go from there. But I think they're going to sign Chase. If they sign Chase, you're talking $35 million plus a year, easy, and $100 million guaranteed. That's what the price of doing business with Jamar Chase is going to be. Are they then going to turn around and give T. Higgins 4 years, $120 and $80 million guaranteed? They're probably the most cash poor team in the NFL. I just cannot imagine that they're going to do it. History says they're not going to do it. And then you get to trade Hendrickson, who's not looking for a second deal, who's looking for a third deal, and is a great player. But like, he's probably looking at $380 to $90 million and 2/3 of it guaranteed. Like, I cannot imagine a world where Mike Brown is going to pay out $250 million in guaranteed money this offseason. If he does, more power to him. It would be a huge break from what Cincinnati has done for years and years and years.
Do you feel like it's likely a tag and trade scenario happens now with T. Higgins? And we've talked about teams who would be interested in him on the free agent market, which would be most teams who are in need of a wide receiver. But does his market change a little bit if it's a tag and trade?
Yes, because you're going to have some teams just go, look, I don't want to trade a pick and pay the guy. Here's the thing, though, with the Bengals that I think people need to understand if they're not familiar with the history of Mike Brown, the way he operates. They don't care. Like, if let's say they tag him and they can't agree to terms, right? And T. Higgins gets frustrated and says, look, I'm not playing. I am not playing on the tag. If Mike Brown doesn't want to trade T. Higgins, they're not trading T. Higgins. I mean, Carson Palmer 20 years ago retired because the Bengals were just like, no, we're not moving you. We don't care. We're not going to do it. Trey Hendrickson wanted a trade last year. The Bengals basically told Trey Hendrickson, that's nice, see you, Cam. Like, they don't operate like most teams. And if Higgins sits out half the year, they'll let him do it. They will just dig their heels in, and they won't move him. Now, look, I do think if you're Higgins, you're not playing on that tag this year. You're not. Because if you're him, you're going, I have got to get paid. I've got to get paid now. He's got a little bit of an injury history. Every year that goes by, you lose some leverage. Like, if I'm him, I'd be like, great, I'll sit out all year. There's no world where I'm doing this. But the Bengals they're unique in that regard. They will dig their heels in as much as any team in the NFL.
Matt Verderame is our guest. He joins us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline, usually on Mondays, but because of the holiday, joining us today. Make sure you find out all of his work at SI.com and Sports Illustrated, as well as the Matt Verderame Show on Patreon and That Football Show at the KC Sports Network. Along with T. Higgins, likely getting the tag here, Matt, there aren't a lot of other candidates around the NFL, like real obvious candidates for the franchise tag. It's kind of a weird year. It's a down year for the draft in terms of overall talent, except at some positions. It's certainly a down year in free agency. That's a really ugly list. And there aren't a lot of real great franchise tag candidates either. Who do you think is the next most likely guy who could get the tag, though?
I don't think anybody else getting the tag. I mean, I think maybe Darnold, but I don't think he's going to get tagged. I don't think they're going to do it. I know people have speculated with Trey Smith. I cannot imagine the Chiefs are going to tag him with $26 million. I just can't. And I know somebody's been thrown out there like, well, they give him the transition tag. Here's the problem with the transition tag. It's $21 million. If any team were to offer Trey Smith a contract, the Chiefs then either have to match the exact terms, including the structure, or let him leave and get nothing out of it. And now they just tied up $21 million in cap space for no reason, beginning of free agency. Like, I just think if you're the Chiefs, you're either going to sign him or you're just going to let him leave and potentially get a compensatory pick depending upon what you do in free agency yourselves. But I think that's it. Like, I actually wrote this piece for Sports Illustrated where I sat down and was looking at it. Like, most years it's about 7 to 10 guys get tagged. I think Higgins is it. I think he's the only guy who's going to get tagged.
I think Trey Smith's going to get a gigantic contract, probably from the Chicago Bears, to be completely honest with you. I know that's a very cold take at this point. Everyone is predicting that, Matt, but I think he's going to get a huge contract from his old buddy Ryan Poles, who, of course, was in KC when the Chiefs drafted Trey Smith. You mentioned Sam Darnold in there, though. I think the market for Sam Darnold is fascinating because there's a couple of teams that you could squint and say, yeah, I think it would make sense for the Vikings to, either trade, re-sign him and trade him, whatever, or he just walks and ends up there. I think Tennessee as a bridge quarterback makes sense. I think Pittsburgh makes an amount of sense, especially since they have a good offensive line. I doubt he goes back to the Jets, but it would be extremely funny if he did. What do you feel is the market for Darnold? Like, do you think he can go somewhere else and be reasonably successful, or was this year purely a Kevin O'Connell creation?
I think it's a combination of, like, I think he can be successful, but I also think, like, Kevin O'Connell's a huge reason why he was successful. I also think Justin Jefferson is a huge reason why he was successful. Look, if you said to me, you got to bet your mortgage, where do you think he goes? I'd say Pittsburgh. Because the Steelers cannot accept the fact that they're not good enough to compete with these top-tier AFC teams. They just can't accept it. Like, if I were the GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I would trade T.J. Watt for picks tonight and start rebuilding that roster. But they're not going to do it because they don't want to do it. So I don't see a world where Fields is starting anywhere, let alone in Pittsburgh. Wilson, I think, is gone. I think he's going to go to the Raiders because of Pete Carroll. Like, I just think, and he wanted to go to the Raiders years ago. But that was one of the options he gave the Seahawks before he ended up in Denver. So I think there's good chances of those things happening. I think, if and when Cousins is released, Cleveland makes a lot of sense. Look, Watson had the setback. I don't think he's ever playing another game in Cleveland, and they're not going to start Jameis Winston or Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So, Cousins has that relationship with Stefanski. I think there's a good chance he goes there, which kind of leaves the Jets. Darnold's not going back to the Jets. Tennessee, who could just draft a quarterback if they want to, or the Steelers. And I just think if you're Darnold, the Steelers are the best chance of you going somewhere and having a good year. And if you're Pittsburgh, you're hoping against all hope that you get him and he's really good and you've solved your quarterback issue. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I think if I were a betting man, that's where I would bet on him landing.
If I was Darnold, I'd rather play behind that line than the one in Tennessee, even if they do add some guys in the draft this year. Another quarterback whose name is in the headlines, and I'm sort of perplexed by this. I guess it's a contractual thing for the future, Matt, but Matt Stafford's future with the Rams, that's another one. Like, if the Steelers could swing a trade there, I think that'd be awesome for them. I don't know that they would make a big enough trade to go get Stafford. We already know that Cooper Kupp is on the trade block. He announced that himself this past week. But what are you hearing about the Matt Stafford situation in Los Angeles? Is that going to work itself out, or are the rumblings real that he might be on the trade block too?
Look, I think that while you can't rule anything out and things could always fall apart, McVay loves Stafford. Like, that's a pretty well-known deal around the league. He loves Matthew Stafford. Stafford is still a very good quarterback. I think if you're the Rams, you do what you have to do to figure that out. You bridge that gap. Now, if they were to trade him, they'd get a lot for him. I mean, Stafford is still a top 10 guy in this league. And he's a guy you can win playoff games with. He's a guy with the right roster you can win Super Bowl with. We've seen it. I do think that Stafford would have a significant market. I still, though, in the end, think if you're the Rams, if you move him, you are essentially just giving up on multiple seasons. I don't know what you do. You're not getting a quarterback this year that's going to move the needle at all. Maybe in 2026 you get a rookie quarterback or a vet. You feel like, okay, you bring him in. I mean, maybe if they moved off of Stafford, then Cousins is the guy because McVay and Stafford go back to McVay and Cousins go back to their days in Washington. But like, I just think in the end, if you're the Rams, you're motivated to figure it out with Stafford.
Matt Verderame joining us here on 580 Sports Talk and the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline, our NFL insider from Sports Illustrated and SI.com. A couple of more questions, Matt. Wanted to get your thoughts now that the coaching carousel has stopped spinning. Kellen Moore, obviously the last piece of that puzzle. He goes, fills the New Orleans Saints vacancy. Now that all of the vacancies are filled, which team do you think made the best hire of the offseason?
New England. I think Vrabel's going to be a really good hire there. Look, the guy can coach. He's a terrific coach. He's proven it. Obviously, it's like the sun coming home. I think that's a great hire. I love Aaron Glenn as a hire. But the question is not about Glenn there. It's about the organization. Can anyone succeed there? Or is Woody Johnson going to get in the way and his teenage son's going to get in the way? And the Jets are going to get in their own way, essentially. That's open-ended. The Bears kind of the same thing. Ben Johnson's a terrific hire, I think. But, you look at the Bears, okay? Well, is ownership going to give them what they need to succeed? Are they going to do that? I think Liam Cohen in Jacksonville, like his press conference, look, I think Liam Cohen is a very bright guy. And he is going to get Trevor Lawrence back on track, which that alone is worth the hire. The question, again, is this is a team that spent a month trying to figure out whether or not to keep Trent Baalke. Ended up not doing it. The defensive side of the roster is a disaster outside of Josh Hines-Allen. So I think if you look at these teams, I think Cohen could turn around Jacksonville fast if the Jaguars can put on their adult pants and figure out things in that building. And then New England, I like Drake May. I like Vrabel. They have the most cap space in football. They've got high pick. Like that team could be that story next year. You're like, wow, they won 10 games. It's like, well, yeah, because they got a coach and a quarterback, and they added 5 impact guys in free agency, and they added 3 in the draft. And, I think they could turn around quickly. In a division where other than Buffalo, really, you're not hopping over any Titans.
Matt Verderame covers the National Football League for Sports Illustrated, SI.com. His subscriber-only Patreon, The Matt Verderame Show, delivers great insight on the Chiefs and the rest of the NFL. You can also hear him on That Football Show on the KC Sports Network and catch him every week here on 580 Sports Talk. Matt, we always appreciate the time. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, guys. Take care.
That is Matt Verderame. We will step aside for one more break this hour. Come back, wrap up the 3 o'clock hour with the good, the bad, the ugly from our long sports weekend. good, the bad, the ugly from the weekend, the long holiday weekend that was. Brendan, what was your good?
Gotta be honest with you, man. It was a pretty crappy weekend. Not a lot of good. I will say my good is that I didn't watch any of NBA All-Star Saturday night, and thus I was able to opt out of all NBA All-Star game discourse.
Oh, good for you. You missed a lot on Saturday night that we might get to in your bad and perhaps your ugly. My good for the weekend, I sit down and watch a little golf. I watched the Genesis. Unfortunately, it was at Torrey Pines and not Riviera, which is a golf course I really enjoy watching. But the Genesis was really good golf. Ludwig Oberg, his second career
Your boy
PGA Tour win. Yeah, I like Big Ludwig. Texas Tech Red Raider, so it's a Big 12 guy. Anyway, that's my good. How about your bad?
My bad. Every basketball team I care about except one lost this weekend. The Washburn women, good win, gritty win over Northeastern State. Bari Widata was awesome. Bari should have been my good. She went for 23 and 16 on Saturday. She was awesome. So the Washburn women, good. Every other team I care about lost Saturday.
Yeah.
And then K-State lost yesterday.
Yeah, my bad was K-State going 0 for Utah. You're ugly?
My ugly is that the northeastern corner of the state of Oklahoma does not have a single snowplow. I had to drive like nearly 35 miles an hour the entire way home I was in Tahlequah, from about Claremore, where Rogers State is, all the way to Coffeyville, Kansas. I had to drive about 35 miles the entire way. I got to Coffeyville. Things were plowed. I took some side roads at one point that had some snow drifts, but it was fine. Kansas was great. Nattawa, Oklahoma, not a single snowplow for 100 miles.
The land that time forgot.
Truly.
My ugly NBA All-Star Sunday. Just get rid of it at this point. We'll get to that maybe in headlines if we get a chance. But no, they evaluated what they were doing, and then they came out the other end and made it worse. So congratulations.
Yeah, it came out the other end all right.
Yeah, congratulations to Adam Silver for that. We will bring in our number 2 with some baseball talk. The Royals had a busy weekend, extending their ace and their general manager. Plus, a round of What Is Wrong With You and Jayhawk Weekly with Michael Swain of Fog.net and 24/7 Sports. That's all coming up on hour number 2 of 580 Sports Talk. Well, let's get it. Hour number 2 of 580 Sports Talk on a Tuesday afternoon. It is our first show of the week after taking the federal holiday off. Hope you had a great weekend. If it was a 3-day weekend for you, hope you enjoyed the long weekend. And thanks for being with us on this Tuesday on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, and online at 580WIBW.com. And a hello to our video viewers this afternoon, checking us out on the YouTube stream. We are on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, streaming every one of our shows live and archived. You can also watch us live on our Facebook page, WIBW News. I am Dan Lucero. Brendan Brzezinski is across the glass. It's just the two of us today. Spencer Dupuy a little bit under the weather. He'll be back tomorrow. We've got 2 more hours of 580 Sports Talk coming your way. No high school basketball tonight. It should come as no surprise if anybody has looked out their window in the last 12 hours that there is no high school basketball happening in the area tonight. So no 580 Preps Tuesday night hoops tonight, unfortunately. But we will bring you the Jeff Mitty Show tonight at 6 o'clock when we're done here on 580 WIBW. Still to come on the program, we're going to talk to Michael Swain of Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, for Jayhawk Weekly. Get in tune with Michael on all things KU athletics. We've also got our Sports Talk headlines. We're going to talk some NFL free agency. We're going to look ahead to tonight's KU game against BYU. We've got What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by Ryan Mowinkle, State Farm agent, coming up. Random Question Tuesday. And your text to the show, 785-272-9429 is the text line. That's 785-272-9429. You can also interact with us in the YouTube chat today. If you are watching on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, there is a live chat feature on the web browser and the mobile app. And you can jump on in and chat with us on the YouTube stream if you would like. Right now, we're talking, guys are talking racing. Daytona 500 was yesterday. Delayed
2 days ago.
Yes, Sunday. Delayed by weather. Almost delayed to Monday. Not quite.
It ended up being like a 7-hour race or some crazy thing.
They ran it pretty late. William Byron, back-to-back winner.
Boogity. He has got to feel like he was touched by an angel, man. There's just crap happening in front of him, and he's just the only car that didn't wreck. Whoop. And you scooch on past you.
Yeah.
Win Daytona.
Yeah, the one that doesn't get caught up in the mess. And
better to be lucky than good.
Yeah, sometimes that is definitely true. It got started not long after the golf ended, so I saw a little bit of it, but did not see the end. I saw it on social media and everything, but did not see the end live. But yeah, we want to hear what how you spent your weekend, your long weekend. Get at us in the live chat. Again, the YouTube channel is 580 Sports Talk. We have some breaking Royals news to tell you about. Breaking Royals news from UniWatch. The Royals will wear all powder blues as their alternate home uniform for the 2025 season. Yes, that means pants and tops in the iconic Royals powder blue. Haven't seen that look for a very long time. Of course, the Royals have worn a powder blue top off and on since 2008 after a long absence of that jersey. But, going back to the powder blue look from 1983 to 1991. It's essentially that old school look. That's your, obviously, your 85 world champs. What, 40-year anniversary of that team this year? Good way to honor them. Bring back the powder blues.
For sure.
So that is the MLB Style Guide revealing that indeed it will be all powder blues, and not just for opening day. They did it for opening day 2 years ago, but they're going to bring them back and have them be the alternate home uniform for 2025.
When are we going to get the early 2000s, maybe late 90s vest uniforms back as the full-time alternate?
Yeah, I really want to see the black Kansas City Royals hat with the blue bill.
God, they're so bad.
Bring that back.
I'm looking at this right now. I think this is Beltron in this picture. I mean, it's just such a classic look, really, to my youth. You're the one with the take that every uniform was the best when you were 10 years old, right?
Yes, correct.
I believe the Royals were still wearing these when I was 10 years old. Here's the problem. You want to celebrate 1985? Great year to celebrate. 40 years of that? Hell yeah. The Royals were ass when they wore these. They were garbage, save for 2003. They stunk. Maybe not what you want to celebrate.
Yeah, man, they were really bad.
But like, look, here's Mike Sweeney. We remember him. We like Mike Sweeney.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate like the year of Mike Sweeney next year and wear Royals vest uniforms.
I guess 2029 would be the year of Mike Sweeney because 29 was his jersey number.
What was his best season? I'm looking it up right now. Michael John Sweeney's best year. It probably would have been 2002.
Okay.
A 148 OPS play. We're 5 wins that year.
Hey, really good player.
Only 126. Yeah, he was a great. He was a White Sox killer. He used to mash against the White Sox. I remember that very vividly from my youth.
Yeah, man. Those like all black tops. Like it was one thing to wear like the gray or the gray vest over the black shirt.
Yeah.
But like the all black tops, like I don't know what it was that got into like every team in baseball or really every team in all sports. It's still a virus infecting uniforms. Iowa State, black is not a school color. Why do you keep wearing black? Stop wearing black.
Jimmy Pollard, you will answer for your crimes.
Yes. Like just don't. They used to call it over at UniWatch back when Paul Lucas ran the website, and I used to read it like every day.
Mm-hmm.
They used to call it BFBS, black for black's sake. Just wearing black for no other reason than, hey, a black uniform. That'll get the people going. It did not get the people going for the Kansas City Royals. Who am I looking at here? Jeff Suppan. Here's a picture of Ken Harvey.
Jeff Suppan.
Like this is not an era worth remembering. Paul Bird, like are we bringing Run Elvis Hernandez
the crafty
back?
lefty.
Like, yeah, no, the memory hole those black ones. Those were really bad.
Give me the Carlos Fabulous specials.
I didn't hate the black cap with the blue bill. I actually had one of those.
It's not terrible.
Yeah, like the black cap was fine. Like if you'd just done that with the gray vest over the black, but to have an all black uniform was so bad.
What do you know about Brandon Berger?
Precious little.
Donzel McDonald.
I could tell you something about Donzel McDonald. His brother was Darnell McDonald, who is one of the greatest high school athletes in the history of the state of Colorado. 3-sport kid, Cherry Creek High School. Like, yeah, like a guy that, like, growing up my age, like Darnell McDonald was who you wanted to be.
Yeah, this team sucked.
Paul shouts out Calvin Pickering. You just want to remember some old Royals instead of
no, because these guys were bad.
You just want to.
These guys suck.
Just remember the 2004 Royals. Shout out to Angel Baroa. Where are my Aaron Guile heads at?
All right, we're doing 2004. I've got 02 up in front of me.
We can do. They all kind of run together after a while.
Well, like
03 was like the freak year where everything went right. We thought Tony Pena could really manage and.
Like shout out Joe Randa.
By the time I made it to Coffin Stadium for my first ever visit in August of 2004, the Nosotros Creemos shirts were on deep discount. Nobody was Creemosing. Nadie creyó at that point, I believe would be how you would translate that. Nobody believed anymore. Nadie creyó by August of 2004.
Give me your hottest Mendy Lopez take. Who spent 2 stints with the Royals.
Yeah, Mendy Lopez was a 2-timer.
For a combined negative 0.5 WAR. I gotta spend 7 years in the bigs.
A preposterous number of these 2004 Royals ended up pitching for the Colorado Rockies later in their career or earlier in their career. Like a stupid number of these guys were future or former Rockies. Shout out to Curtis Laskanik.
I was just about to mention, I just pulled him up.
Curtis Laskanik, or as we called him, Curtis Let's Panic. That was unfair to him. He was actually pretty good at for a stretch. Anyhow, the modern Royals are much more fun to talk about.
I'll say.
And they were busy over the weekend. A 3-year contract extension for Cole Ragans and an extension through 2030 for general manager JJ Piccollo. We'll get to the GM in a bit. But it's funny to see the contract with Ragans referred to as an extension because it's really not.
Yeah, it's only an extension because of the dumb way that baseball does contracts for young players.
So if there had not been any financial agreement between the Royals and Ragans, this would have been Ragans' final year pre-arbitration. And when you are pre-salary arbitration, your salary is essentially predetermined. It's in the collective bargaining agreement what you're going to make. So he, as a second-year pre-arb player last year, made $753,000. $753,750 was his season salary. Bargain of the century, if you ask me. That probably would have gotten bumped up to about $775,000, $800,000 in that range. Then the 3 seasons following that, Cole Ragans would have been arbitration eligible. And that's the process whereupon player and his representation say, I think I should make this much money. And the team says, well, we think you should make this much money. And typically an agreement is reached. If there is not, you go through the arbitration process. But again, that's the kind of thing that generally serves to dampen your salary. You don't make as much as you would make on the open market if you're an arbitration eligible player. So Cole Ragans signs a 3-year, $13.25 million contract extension with the Royals. And that averages out to a little more than $4 million a year over the next 3. And so that's a really nice bonus for Cole Ragans this year, right? Like Cole Ragans was going to make something less than $800,000, which again, not bad for a year's worth of work, but he's going to make more money this year, all the way up to $1 million. He will make $1 million this year. So he gets about a $200,000 salary bump plus a signing bonus on top of it. His salary in 2026 will go up to $4.5 million and then $7.5 million in 2027. That number could go up to $8 million if he wins a Cy Young in either of the next 2 seasons. And if that happens, either way, this is still a bargain and a half for the Royals. It makes all the sense in the world for the Royals to get some cost certainty on a guy who was one of the best pitchers in baseball last year and projects as one of the best pitchers in baseball moving forward over the life of this extension. But for Ragans, well, why would you do this? You ask, why do this if you're Cole Ragans? Cole Ragans has had Tommy John surgery twice.
Like, it's insurance. This is an insurance policy.
It really is. It locks in some financial security for Ragans should injury or underperformance strike. And for the Royals, it's a little bit like, we talk about the open box special. Like you go to Best Buy or wherever it sells electronics and you buy the TV that's been on display. So the box is already open. And you get it for a little cheaper?
Amazon warehouse. That's the move these days. Get like a $60 item for $45 because it was returned. Oh, yeah.
Open box special. And you can get open box specials for a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's because it's the display. Sometimes it's because it got a little bit dented or like a small scratch that's barely noticeable, but they got to put the sofa out on display anyway. And you get it for cheap. A lot of open box specials out there. This is an open box special for the Royals a little bit. They are going to pay Cole Ragans handsomely. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he's working for peanuts, but it is maybe a little less than what he could have gotten at arbitration each of the next 2 years, particularly if this year he goes back to the All-Star game. He's a top 5 Cy Young Award vote getter again. But for Ragans, it makes sense to take it again because you have that security, given the fact that you never know how a 2-time Tommy John survivor is going to hold up. It also, for the Royals...
Survivor. I mean, in a way, his career survived.
His arm is a survivor. His arm has survived Tommy John twice. It also gives the Royals a little more of an idea of what their payroll is going to look like the next 3 years. And maybe that cost certainty allows the Royals to take on a contract or sign a player they might not have felt comfortable acquiring if they were worried about a looming top-of-the-scale arbitration salary coming up for Cole Ragans. So, good business, both sides, no complaints here. It's the kind of thing a normal baseball team does. And the Royals, for a while there in the end of the Dayton Moore era, did not feel like a normal baseball team. They felt like a particularly muscular men's group at an evangelical church, but not like a modern Major League Baseball organization. And J.J. Piccollo, to his credit, and frankly, in a way that I wasn't all the way sure I was going to see, and in a way that I don't think necessarily everybody would have expected, has been responsible for the Royals going from what they were at the end of the Dayton Moore era to what they are right now. Forward thinking, analytically driven, developmentally changing the way that they approach how they develop hitters, how they develop pitchers, hell, how they draft hitters, how they draft pitchers. The Royals feel like a brand new organization. They don't feel like a relic of the pre-analytics days, which is how often, again, they felt under Dayton Moore. And for J.J. Piccollo to not be Dayton Moore 2.0 and instead operate in this forward-thinking fashion, he, to me, is well worth the extension. And I feel like the Royals organization's in good hands as long as he's at the controls.
It doesn't happen often when you replace a bad player or certainly a bad coach, bad front office person with somebody who, like, with an assistant. And I was just listening to a podcast today about the NFL and every team's needs going into the offseason. And they were mentioning the Jaguars and how the Jaguars fired their or it was the Texans, excuse me, but it was before they bashed the Jaguars. It was the Texans. And hey, they fired their offensive line coach. Great. That needed to happen. Who'd they replace him with? Their assistant offensive line coach. Well, wait a minute. Why'd you do that? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Your line stunk. Why would you just promote an assistant? Generally, that doesn't work. The idea is they know the organization and they are able to put their stamp on it. They know what their predecessor did wrong. They can make adjustments from there. Doesn't always work. I have my doubts that it'll work for the Houston Texans and their offensive line. However, that clearly did pan out for Piccollo because while I think Dayton Moore for the last, when did he get let go? Before the 23 season? Was it?
Yeah.
I think he spent the last 7 or so years of his tenure with the Royals trying to chase, let's be frank, it's one of the biggest anomalies in baseball history. The way the economics of the game are right now, I do not think we will ever see a quote-unquote small market team ever go to back-to-back World Series again. Unless something like monumental shifts in a collective bargaining agreement, I do not think we will see a small market team, quote-unquote, go to back-to-back World Series, and especially not built the way that those Royals teams were built, with like fielding, speed, and pitching. But a pitching staff that was way better than it probably should have been.
It's already anomalous. Like if you go back to the post-strike era of Major League Baseball, you just look at 1995 onwards, they are an anomaly.
Yeah, it's freak stuff. And I think Dayton Moore, aside from me being maybe almost personally critical of the guy, was trying to chase that dragon the entire time. It was, well, it worked once. And who's our next Alcides Escobar? It's Ryan Goins. No, stop this. You have to play the modern game. This is the Royals way of doing it, and this is how we're going to stick to it. And it was a disaster. We had 2 rebuilds in 7 years. Piccollo understands, from what I can tell, how to win and how to intelligently build a roster for a smaller market team that is simultaneously willing to spend, but also has more restraints on spending than the Mets or the Dodgers, etc. And I think he knows how to do that. He's a good identifier of talent. I think he threads the needle really well in a way that most small market teams either can't, or like if you're Pittsburgh, you just say, we don't care. We're just going to make money on revenue sharing. So I think Piccollo has done a tremendous job. You throw out the first year, who cares? You had a huge mess to clean up. And I think he's done a great job. He and Quattrero both should have won their respective Executive and Manager of the Year awards last year.
I would have given Piccollo an extension strictly for the Ragans trade. Yeah. I mean, that looks like one of the all-time heists that the Royals were able to, like, again, this is normal forward-thinking baseball organization behavior. Go get a guy, Aroldis Chapman, who if it goes well for him, he could have value beyond his value to you at the trade market, on the trade market at the trade deadline, and you go and you turn that into Cole Ragans. You go and you turn that into the guy who finished 4th in Cy Young voting and looks like an absolute beast and somebody who's going to be able to front your rotation for the next half decade.
This is a bit of a stretch, but for perspective's sake, in 2016, the Yankees traded half a season of prime Aroldis Chapman, like the fully formed Aroldis Chapman in his prime, to the Chicago Cubs for half a season. Everybody knew when 16 ended, Chapman was going to go back to the Yankees and re-sign. That was a very open secret, at least in Chicago. That was a very open secret. They got Gleyber Torres out of it, who was a very highly touted prospect. Mm-hmm. And Gleyber Torres is a fine Major League Baseball player. He's a bad fielder, but he's a fine player. The Royals traded for half a season of Aroldis Chapman, traded him after a half a season, well past his prime, and ended up getting a legitimate bona fide ace for the long haul. They got a better deal than the Yankees did when they dealt Chapman in his prime. And I know I'm stretching it. There are a lot of variables at play here. And Ragans, like you said, was the open box special because of the two Tommy John surgeries. But like, that's insane business. That is, again, threading the needle, risk versus reward, which teams are either not, most teams, even not small market teams, are not willing to do in Major League Baseball for the most part. But he did it effectively. I can't think of a move, Dan, that has been outwardly like, wow, this is a disaster. Like, and even good GMs and good baseball ops people, like, oh yeah, that sucked. Like that was a whiff. Like,
or you don't like the Chris Stratton deal looks a little funny in the light, but like you could see the thought process behind it. Like they feel like a team with a plan at the end of the day.
And that didn't work. But that also didn't even end up, it sucked that you had to use him so much through 4 months, but you ended up still trading for Lucas Erceg. That's a step up. The Hunter Harvey thing, he got hurt, but that was clearly a better vision than the Chris Stratton thing. Bubic comes back and is your second best bullpen arm. Like, they ended up working out anyway because you made more shrewd moves to overcome that.
You know what's really something about where the Royals are at right now? Like, on the upswing as an organization, you would have expected that. So famously, the Royals run to those back-to-back pennants was built on the back of the farm system, right? It was built on the back of guys like Mike Moustakas, who's a first-round pick, Eric Hosmer, who's a first-round pick, Alec Gordon, who was a first-round pick, also Salvador Perez was a big international signing, a guy they developed. The Royals spent all of the 2010s basically swinging and missing with their first-round picks. Like, it's disaster after disaster. Guys you've never heard of, guys who never made the major leagues, guys who weren't particularly good when they got there. The guys who have been good major leaguers were guys the Royals traded to help them get other players who helped them win the World Series, like Sean Manaea and Brandon Finnegan, helped them get Ben Zobrist and Johnny Cueto in 2015 and get them over the line that year. But they're in a phase right now where you would have expected the first round draft picks of the late 2010s to be impacting the major leagues. Bobby Witt Jr. certainly is, but Nick Prado's on his last real crack at making the roster. If he doesn't make the roster out of spring, he's going to get DFA'd. They're not going to keep him on the 20. If they don't keep him on the 26, they have to because he's out of options. The 3 first rounders they took in 2018, all pitchers, 2 of them are out of the organization now. One of them, the one that's left, is Daniel Lynch, who's a reliever now. Asa Lacy in 2020. Less said about him, the better. Like, they fumbled the bag with some really high draft picks, and they're still here. They're still in a contention window. That's a huge credit to what J.J. Piccollo has done. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, it's What Is Wrong With You time on 580 Sports Talk. So what is wrong with you time on 580 Sports Talk, presented by State Farm agent Ryan Mowinkle. Check out his website, ryanmowinkle.com. That's Mowinkle. See what Mowinkle Insurance and Financial Services can do for you.
Man, make sure those policies are up to date with this freaking snow out here, man.
Yeah, that's a fact.
I'm telling, and I mean, it's coming down here. I'm telling you, man, Saturday night coming home from Tahlequah, that was white knuckle driving all the way to the state line. It was not fun.
No.
And I like road trips. I like the solitude of taking these long trips with Washburn. Well, that was not fun. One bit.
Our first story today takes us to Vero Beach, Florida, where a woman was arrested for firing a BB gun at two teens riding their dirt bikes near her home. Indian River County Sheriff's deputies responded to a disturbance call around 5:45 p.m. Deputies located the two teens, who told them as they were riding past a house, they saw 42-year-old Victoria Lund standing outside, pointing a BB gun in their direction. They then heard two loud bangs, which they assumed were BBs. Neither pellet hit the teens or their bikes. However, the teens told deputies that they were confused and didn't understand what was going on. One of the teens took a video of the incident that appeared to show Lund standing in her front yard, yelling at the teens to, quote, go home right now. When deputies contacted Lund, she admitted to holding the gun on the teens to scare them off, but she denied firing the weapon. She said they were driving recklessly back and forth in front of her house on dirt bikes, like, kids. A deputy then entered her home, where he retrieved a BB gun with pellets inside of it. Deputies charged her with 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and 2 counts of child abuse. Just let kids be kids, man.
You ever been hit by a BB gun?
Nope.
I was running, and this is a true story. I was a freshman in high school on my school's cross-country team. We were at this big public park one town over for a meet, and some kid was sitting in his bedroom in the house right next to the park sniping racers with a BB gun.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was wild. I had a little welt on my arm. I got hit. Didn't really matter. I sucked. I was at the back of the pack anyway. But yeah, no, it's not fun. Very unpleasant. But yeah, I like kids be kids, man. This is like the story we had a few weeks ago where something about kids being in someone's lawn and they were getting, guy next door was freaking out at him. Like, just come on. You live in the suburbs. This comes with the territory.
Yeah. No kidding.
All right. My story today, this is courtesy of Spencer Dupuis, who's not with us today, feeling under the weather. We hope to have Spencer back on the show tomorrow. So this is Spencer's story for today, read to you by me. This headline is tremendous. Woman banned from every Walmart location in the United States.
Wow.
We head to Memphis and meet 37-year-old Ashley Cross, who, according to WREG-TV, was banned from every Walmart location across the country due to her reported history of taking products from the business without paying. Authorities responded to the Walmart on Elvis Presley Boulevard in Memphis at 3:40 p.m. over the weekend to investigate a report of shoplifting, and upon arriving at the scene, they were informed that 2 women were stealing, one of whom was Cross. Memphis police told the TV station Cross is a well-known shoplifter. She'd been caught on camera utilizing an old watch barcode battery to scan multiple items for $1 at the self-checkout. Things she stole included 11 packs of ramen noodles, jeans, a t-shirt, and boots. All told, $137.
Sounds like a night out.
The second woman was accused of taking...
Fit and 11 packs of ramen noodles. Big night.
Yeah. The other woman was accused of taking 2 bras, a lash kit, a backpack, and a car accessory totaling under $58. She got a misdemeanor. Cross has also been charged with criminal trespass and theft of under $1,000. Banned from every Walmart in America. That's got to get my vote today. That takes intensity to get a ban of that scale. How often was she shoplifting?
Right? I mean, like, she's not going for the big ticket items. Clearly, this is like a love of the game kind of thing for her.
Oh, well, maybe I'm going to take a trip to Alaska for a cruise and go to Walmart. Nope. Yeah. No chance.
Yeah, like what happens if, like, she's in an area where, like, let's say she happens upon Holton, Kansas, and is stopped in Holton, Kansas, and really needs like a bag of gummy bears, maybe her pants ripped, she needs a new pair of jeans, and also some prescription medication or over-the-counter medication, and also a shower curtain. And she can't go to the Walmart.
Nope.
Like, she cannot go.
Tough beans.
Yeah, she can't. She's banned for life. It's a very funny thing to be banned for life from Walmart. And that will be our first daily winner of this week on What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by State Farm agent Ryan Mowinkle. Give our guy Mo a shout on his website, ryanmowinkle.com. KayU's.com. We got to step aside. Jayhawk Weekly with Michael Swain is next. We are joined on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline by Michael Swain of Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. His analysis can be found at Fog.net. Become a VIP subscriber today so you can get all the good stuff from Michael as he covers the Jayhawks in all sports. You can also catch him here on 580 Sports Talk every Tuesday at this time. Michael, why can't KU score the basketball?
Man, I think this is a weekly segment on our interviews, right? Trying to figure this issue out. It's bad right now. It really is, and it's one of those things where KU's offense has definitely tailed off over the last couple of weeks. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it's like 102nd over the last 4 or 5 games, something like that. Like KU's just in a rut, and I think you have to look at this team and say, all right, well, at the start of the year, how are they scoring? Well, Hunter Dickinson was doing what he does. Zeke Mayo was playing really well. I think KU was able to get a lot more out of Rylan Griffin. AJ Stower's playing a little bit more. And just lately, I think you look at it and, KJ Adams has these 5-6 minute bursts where he scores, but outside of that, he's still playing 30 plus minutes a game and he's not scoring a bunch. And then, Zeke Mayo's done all right, but, he's had his ups and downs with efficiency, and DeJuan Harris hasn't been super consistent. So you just kind of, you're looking at it now and saying, man, like, it's a team that isn't super execution based, right? You think about some of the past Bill Self teams where they just ran sets all game and they executed at a high level. Like, I think that's something with the 2020 team that made it so good was the fact that it just ran the offense and it executed things so well that it didn't matter what the defense did. KU was going to get a good shot. And I think right now KU is really laboring and they're really struggling to get good shots because obviously a lot of the, lineup and roster issues that we've talked about in the past, right? Playing 3 non-shooters and sometimes even 4, depending on the lineup. So I think generally, right, it comes down to KU as a team is kind of just in funk, and you factor that in with some of just the roster construction stuff, and yeah, you're going to run into some issues.
It feels like a lot of the same conversations we were having about last year's team at times, Michael, in the sense that, well, you've got guys who need space to operate. Well, what gives you space? Good 3-point shooters the other team has to respect. This team's bad at shooting threes. And they tried to address that last year with Nick Timberlake and I guess just Nick Timberlake, and that didn't work. And they tried to address it this year too, and it also hasn't worked. They have not appreciably gotten better from behind the 3-point arc. How much of that is the issue? The fact that they still have not been able to bring in the shooters for hire that they've needed to make the spacing work for guys like Harris and Adams in particular, who really need space if they're going to be able to operate.
Yeah, so I think it's a multifaceted problem, right? You know, Rylan Griffin, I think, is the guy who going into this, you'd say, yeah, like he's the guy that I think you feel like, okay, he's the guy that could be your floor spacer. Well, you know, he has ups and downs and he's had some struggles, and now he's shooting 35% from 3 on the season. 2 weeks ago, maybe even less than 2 weeks ago, 3-4 games ago, he was shooting 39%. You know, he's in a rut right now. You know, Zeke Mayo, right? He's a guy that he is what he is from 3, and he's done a good job this year, right? 40%. But the issue is that you're looking at the minutes, and Rylan Griffin has played 19 minutes a game this year. It's a little less recently because he's not playing as much, right? AJ Storr hasn't played as much, and granted, he's not someone that's known as a 3-point shooter, but he is still someone that is a scorer, and he does not fit. And so I think you can go back and say, okay, was taking AJ Storr the right decision? I think there are a lot of people that at the time felt like, oh, it's definitely a risk, and that risk has not paid off for KU. And so all of a sudden you look at it and you're like, all right, who is that third shooter? It's David Coit, right? And he's got his own deficiencies defensively and even offensively, the inability to put, pressure on the rim and take guys off the dribble. Like, in theory, at the start of the year, the roster looked a certain way. And with the way it has played out, whether that because, is evaluation misses like an AJ Storr, or it's just not really working out with a guy like Rylan Griffin and earning the necessary minutes to be a guy that can really have an impact stretching the floor. And as a result, you're in that same issue, right? KJ Adams is averaging 30 minutes a game in the month of February. DeJuan Harris and Hunter Dickinson are still playing a bunch of minutes. And you're kind of looking at it and saying, well, if those 3 guys are playing a bunch of minutes, it's going to be really, really hard to create any sort of space, regardless of how well Zeke Mayo shoots it, or even if you have Rylan Griffin on the floor, right? If you only have 2 floor spacers, you can do some stuff, but it's not anywhere near as much as you can do when you got 3 guys out there that can shoot and 2 guys that want to go and try and take it off the dribble.
Michael Swain is our guest. He covers the Kansas Jayhawks for Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. If you're not already a VIP, you are missing out on all the best insight into what's going on with KU sports. You can go, again, find him at Fog.net and 247sports.com. Michael, is the biggest thing missing from this KU team NBA caliber talent? I know this has been bandied about on social media quite a bit, and I'm sure on the message boards too as of late, that, this team's got some really good, or at least theoretically good college players like DeJuan Harris, all-time point guard kind of records at KU. Hunter Dickinson, very good college player. KJ Adams, good college basketball player, if even limited. But there's no one, or not many guys you look at and go, oh yeah, that's an NBA guy. Next year, Darren Peterson, he's certainly going to be that. But you look at the great KU teams of recent vintage, national championship team, Ochai and CB and Jalen Wilson, all NBA guys, all contributing to some degree. CB's a starter for a really good team. National championship team. Devon Dotson, probably a draft pick if he stays one more year, but he plays in the NBA for a few years. Doak was a first-round pick. Even the 23 team that met that unfortunate end against Arkansas during the Bill Self-health problem, like, Jalen Wilson was a legit NBA guy. McCullough would go on to the NBA, and he hadn't dealt with all of his injury stuff yet. Is that the biggest thing that's missing here? Just no guy who is in alpha in terms of just basketball talent?
Yeah, it is. And I think I think you made a great point, right? Really good college players. And so I think of really good college players, I think of guys that have good skill, but limited athleticism, right? And I think that fits for, I think a lot of the roster right now, right? Hunter Dickinson has some skill, limited athletically, is not going to play in the NBA. You can look at Zeke Mayo, good, really well skilled. He's going to have a long pro career, probably in Europe. And then you got Juwan Harris, same deal. And so what KU doesn't have right now is just a dynamic player. And I think at times this year, Floyd Badunga has looked like the most dynamic player on the team, right? When he had that stretch there in what was that, late January, right, where he's playing 30 minutes a game and scoring the ball and dunking on people. And, he looked like the most dynamic player KU had. And I think that is the thing that this team just sorely misses. And I think you see that in KU's ability to get to the rim, right? KU against Utah in the final 11 minutes and 30 seconds barely got to the rim. And for how many years has Bill Self's teams done such a great job of creating just a little bit of driving lane, and they've got the athletes to go and attack off the dribble and get to the rim and either draw foul or convert. And you look at this team and there just isn't that, right? KU's free throw rate is really bad. I think that goes back to, again, do you have the guys that have the athleticism to get to the rim and make people go and foul them? And KU just doesn't have that. And I think that's when some of the pro stuff shows up, right? It is the athleticism that separates players from being NBA guys versus guys that have long pro careers overseas. So I think it's a great point. This is not a team that's going to have multiple NBA guys. I think one NBA guy on the team right now is Floyd Badunga. And even then, he is still a year, maybe 2 years away from being that type of player where you're saying, yeah, this guy's going to go play in the NBA and have the chance to be a productive player. I just don't see it, right? If you want to play fantasy land, right, you could say, oh, well, if AJ Storr had bought in and had maybe changed the approach he has to basketball, maybe he's the type of guy. Or maybe, if Rylan Griffin defensively had been better and maybe had been a little bit more consistent with just the way he plays offensively, maybe he's the guy. But, again, those are if, buts, and maybes. And I think that comes back to the issue, right? There are guys that are good in college, and then there are guys that are, right, no doubt, yep, this guy's a pro, and right now KU just doesn't have that.
We'll go into this question more in depth when the season does eventually come to an end, but just off the top of your head, of the guys actively playing, so take El Marco and take Jamari out of this with the injury in the red shirt, but of the guys who are on this roster of eligibility left, Flory, Storr, Rylan Griffin, probably Diggy Coit, Rakis Passmore. I don't know if Clements does or not, but I don't really care about 41 right now. How many of those guys are going to be on this roster next year? Just first number that comes to mind.
Oh, wow. Let's see. Flory. Yeah, Flory. And then you got to kind of just wait and see. I don't think AJ Storr will be back, right? He's done that any number, right, of schools and any number of years. KU would love to get Rylan Griffin back. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's getting to the point where that ship has sailed. I think get Rakis Passmore back would be great if KU can do that. But I really think right now, and it's such a weird deal where you look up and down, right? You say, all right, well, Hunter, Zeke, DeJuan, KJ, and Shaq, right? They're all gone. Well, then that's already a chunk of the scholarship roster. And then you've got your guys that are redshirting. So really, I think it does come down to Rakis, Flory, and then maybe David Coit, maybe not. We'll have to see. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be sorted out when they do some of those exit interviews and they talk about season as a whole, the vision for the future, and what exactly KU's going to do. But I have a feeling it's going to be another big roster overhaul / big portal year for KU, because they're going to go up to 14 scholarships next year, and that's going to involve adding a lot of players. So it's going to be a really, really interesting offseason.
All right, 30 seconds here, Michael. If KU gets the win tonight, how does it come about? How does it unfold?
BYU shoots 0 of 30 from 3. I think this is the type of game where,
that.
You look at the crowd, right? BYU's already getting ready for it. They're a team that shoots a lot of threes, and KU just struggles to keep up with those types of teams because of the way the offense works. So I think for KU, it's going to come down to, can you guard the three-point arc? Can you take pride in that? Because they really struggled against Utah. If they come out, guys, and play with the same amount of attention to detail against Utah tonight against Utah, it's going to be a blowout. They have to play well defensively, and offensively, I think they need to have a very, very clean game. No turnovers, no silly giveaways or shots. I think it's going to be a very efficient game from KU offensively, just to match what BYU does.
Michael Swain covers the Jayhawks for Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, and he joins us every Tuesday for Jayhawk Weekly here on 580 Sports Talk. Michael, always a pleasure. We'll do it next week.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Talk to you then.
That is Michael Swain. We'll take one final break, come back, and wrap up this hour of 580 Sports Talk. Coming up in the third and final hour of 580 Sports Talk today, we're going to talk about what ESPN thinks are the best fits in NFL free agency. Spoiler alert, apparently not a lot of them fit the Chiefs, but all three of the Chiefs on the top 53 agent list are apparently better fits elsewhere. We'll get into that. We'll also do a little bit more of a preview of tonight's Kansas basketball game at BYU. Is it a must-win when it comes to seeding for the Jayhawks?
Sounds like it's not going to matter based on what Michael told us.
Yeah, if they make one three-pointer, I'll just turn it off. But we'll start the hour with our 580 Sports Talk headlines. That's coming up. Stay with us. One more hour of 580 Sports Talk coming up. Well, let's get it. Hour number 3 on this Tuesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. If you've been with us, thanks for hanging out. If you're just joining us, welcome in. Here on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com, and on our live video stream. You can check us out on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, and on Facebook at WIBW News. I am Dan Lucero. Brendan Wierzinski is with me. Spencer Dupuis is out ill. He'll be hopefully back tomorrow. We got one more hour of the show today.
Not like Beastie Boys ill. He actually doesn't feel well.
Yeah, he's not Lil Wayne and a Millie ill.
I can't even say the line.
No, you can't.
There's no way to say that line without saying a curse word that will get me fired immediately.
I believe, actually, I don't know if you watched any of the SNL 50 on Sunday night.
I did not.
I did. I watched a good portion of it.
I ended, on social media, I ended up seeing the Q&A clip that Amy Poehler and Tina Fey did at the beginning. I did end up seeing that.
Yes, that was a great way to show everybody how many famous people were in the audience, and they even alluded to that throughout the course of the Q&A. But Lil Wayne did like a medley sometime would have been the final hour of the show. And if you wanted to know what his Super Bowl halftime would have been like, it probably would have been pretty similar to that. I think the Roots were his backing band. That was kind of cool. But I believe the line sanitized for TV is simply, "Homeboy, I'm ill."
All right.
Yeah.
That's 5 fewer letters than the normal word, but
yes.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's a good quick math in your head.
It works.
Yeah, I enjoyed SNL 50. I get the criticism, like, oh, Saturday Night Live sucks. It's not as funny as it was when I was 14 years old, which literally everybody, just like sports uniforms were the best when you were 10, Saturday Night Live was the best when you were 14. I
said that to my wife yesterday. We were talking about, because her mom's a huge SNL fan. They watched a little of the concert on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I watched the documentary on the music of SNL, which I thought was very interesting. That was on last week. But I made a comment about how, they always say that she was saying that she loved SNL like when we were in junior high,
right?
And Fred Armisen and, that group, Will Forte, all them. And I go, yeah, everyone always says that SNL was the best when you were in junior high. And she paused and went, oh, that's so true.
It is.
Yeah.
No, like you asked me, like my favorite era of the show, it's the Will Ferrell era. And that's like,
Ferrell and Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah,
and
junior high, high school. That's the sweet spot when I'd catch like the first couple of sketches with my parents before they went to bed. And yeah, that was the time in which I enjoyed Saturday Night Live the most. Like there's still some stuff they'll do here and there, like the Please Don't Destroy skits that they do. Those tickle the funny bone every single time. Those are funny. Like when they did the Jiffy Lube hard seltzer, all the different companies that had a hard seltzer that they were trying. How you tried the JCPenney's hard seltzer.
The best comedy always has a little kernel of truth.
Yes, hysterically funny to me. Like the Lonely Island stuff always hit for me. Andy Samberg and those guys absolutely batting 1,000. Never missed, not one time.
Very funny.
I just had sex. I'm on a boat. You know what in a box. The thing they did wasn't a Saturday Night Live thing, but the thing where they were Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire, the Bash Brothers. That's on Netflix.
That's the closest I've ever been to feeling like I was on drugs, was watching Bash Brothers. Wow. So this is what acid feels like.
The unauthorized biography of the Bash Brothers, whatever the hell it's called. It's on Netflix. I cannot recommend it more highly. No, that's the stuff that I still find to be funny. Like, am I cracking up at some of the other stuff? No, I'm not. Like, I like the recurring characters. I like Brian Fellows' Safari Planet, the Tracy Morgan's recurring character. Astronaut Jones slays me.
Okay, that I did. I thought, there was something else I feel like I saw. I did see the Black Jeopardy from Sunday where Eddie Murphy played Tracy Morgan.
Yes.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, that was
pretty good.
That was very funny. Anyway, that was on Sunday. That ran long. Paul McCartney performed at the very end. I mean, look, I hope I sound that good when I'm that old.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. All-time wonderful musician. Just not for me. I probably would have pulled the old iPhone out at that time.
Yeah, I'm not.
I once saw Paul McCartney at a music festival, stayed for like 6 songs and left.
Hey, you stayed for 6 songs.
Yeah, I did. And I heard a lot of Wings, and I thought, okay, I'm good.
Well, if it was one of those shows, I don't blame you for
Yeah,
dipping out.
it was 2015, I think, at Lollapalooza. I left early, went and saw Flying Lotus, which I loved. So
Growing up and maturing involves admitting that, yeah, indeed, the Beatles had some hits. Not as many as like Migos, but like they had some hits.
Was coming.
Coming up this hour of 580 Sports Talk, we're going to talk a little KU hoops. We're going to talk NFL free agency. But we're going to start this hour with the 580 Sports Talk headlines. We want you to weigh in. We want to hear from you on the YouTube chat. If you are watching live on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, there is a live chat feature you can participate in and interact with us and your fellow listeners. It's on the web browser. It's on the mobile app. And we appreciate everybody who's jumped in on that today. Makes it lively like it is every day. You can also text the program. Want to hear from you in the text line, 785-272-9429. That is 785-272-9429. Let's start with the headlines. We'll start with the NFL headline. We talked about the 3 o'clock hour of the show. In case you missed it, you can catch the podcast on our website, 580wibw.com, and on Spotify.
Hey, real quick, can you introduce headlines one more time for me?
Yes,
we're gonna add some production elements to this show.
Oh, we are. Okay. It is time for our 580 Sports Talk headlines. All right. Okay.
This is going on YouTube because it's rights free.
Hey, that works for me. All right. First headline from ESPN.com. Sources: Bengals aim for deals with Chase, Higgins, Hendrickson. Jeremy Fowler writes that the Cincinnati Bengals are hoping to pull off an ambitious and expensive offseason, attempting to secure their 3 stars that need new contracts for the long term: wide receivers Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and defensive end Trey Hendrickson. Higgins is set to hit free agency March 12th, and the team source quoted in the story believes the Bengals will use the franchise tag on Higgins. That would be the non-exclusive franchise tag. Obviously, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins have been one of the most outstanding wide receiver duos in the NFL for the last few years. Trey Hendrickson has back-to-back seasons of 17 and a half sacks. These are players that, if they did hit the open market, would instantly become the most in-demand players at their positions on the open market. That's going to make it hard for the Bengals to keep them. Also making it hard for the Bengals to keep them, as Matt Verderame laid out for us in the 3 o'clock hour, the entire history of the Cincinnati Bengals, who are one of the cheapest organizations known to man. They are cheap in a way that it is hard to be cheap in a salary cap sport.
Yeah, the fact that they don't have Remember, this was not a joke all the times we've said it. They sold the naming rights to Paul Brown Stadium to have cash on hand to pay Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, look, yeah, duh. If you need to pay Joe Burrow, you freaking pay Joe Burrow. That's not an issue, but they're just cheap. And they're not, the Brown family, Mike Brown currently in charge, his dad, Paul Brown, one of the most important people in the history of the sport of football. Like, football is their business. They're not Jerry Jones, who got rich in oil first. They're not the Hunts, who also got rich in oil first. Football is their business. That being said, and not that I'm like in favor of private equity purchasing into professional sports, because they bought into the Cubs and it's only gotten worse. So I'm not in favor of that. That being said, dog, like 5%. 5% of the team. Come on, get a little cash on hand. Come on. It doesn't even have to be to private equity. Sell it to somebody to get a little more cash on hand to pay these dudes. Please.
I find it to be highly unlikely they keep all 3. I think the most likely scenario is they pay Jamar Chase top of the market, and like maybe they tag Higgins, but Higgins won't play on the tag, and then that creates a whole other set of problems for them, and they might end up having to do a tag and trade there. But I just don't see a scenario where they can make this happen. It's nice to talk about. It's probably something that plays well with the fan base heading into an offseason following a year where the Bengals were hugely disappointing.
I mean, Burrow went on a podcast this past week and broke down how cap restructures work and how they can fit everybody under the cap. And even said, well, the Eagles pay everybody. That seems like the way to go.
Nobody would want it done more than him. But again, given the history of the Bengals, I think it's pretty unlikely that they're able to pull it off. And even if they do, that still poses the issue of the rest of the roster is stinky and not getting a whole lot better.
Yeah, so there's a few points that I want to bring up here. One, the thing that really complicates things, T. Higgins is really good. I think T. Higgins is going to go somewhere and probably be your best number 2 wide receiver in football. It's him and Devontae Smith are the two best number 2s in football. He'll go somewhere and probably be a pretty good number 1. Now he can't go as a free agent, but if anyone was going to trade for him or acquire him this year, I still think it's New England. He's Joe Burrow's like best friend. The two of them are even closer than Burrow and Chase are. Not that those two are like enemies, but T. Higgins and Joe Burrow, and Burrow has come out and said as much. Like Higgins is his guy. They came into the league at the same time. They are boys. Even if Joe Burrow also loves Jamar Chase and vice versa, it's hard to say, yeah, don't pay my boy. That complicates things a little bit here. You mentioned the roster kind of stinks. Here's the one benefit, the one good thing. And I think Lou Anarumo is a really good coach. I don't think Al Golden bringing a new voice into the room is probably good. Terrible head coach in college, but a good defensive mind. Maybe just some new ideas will help that room. They could build their entire defense outside of Trey Hendrickson out of like day 3 picks and be no worse. Like, oh, we're going to build our entire starting defense with 5 UDFAs and 6 day 3 picks. And we're still going to be like 20th or worse in defense. Like it's not going to change anything. It might just be cheaper. I'm joking, but kind of not. The one thing, this came up earlier today from Brett Coleman, film guy on YouTube. He's got a big Twitter presence. I think he does a really good job. Some of his takes are crap, but his film breakdowns are really, really good. So he posted this on the website formerly known as Twitter. The salary cap is going to explode again, all because of the change in how Nielsen measures TV ratings. I hate ratings talk, but this is relevant. Starting this year, Nielsen is leaning into using data directly from smart TV manufacturers to measure viewing habits in addition to the traditional at-home method. This means NFL ratings, in particular from Sunday Ticket on YouTube, are going to be more accurately measured. That number is going to be way bigger than you think because of also how many Gen Z and millennial consumers watch football on streaming services. So, like, I use YouTube TV. Someone who uses Hulu, or they have NFL Sunday Ticket or whatever. Those are not accounted for in the Nielsen ratings week by week during the regular season. So better and bigger ratings means that when the NFL in 2028 has an opt-out of the current media deal with every company but ESPN, ABC, they can opt out of it and say, yeah, you're paying us twice as much. Because as it turns out, like 40% more people are watching this than we had determined previously. And that is going to lead. And where does the salary cap come from? If you don't already know, the TV money. Yep. Like, oh, well, we can hold it, stick it to the NFL and our teams with bad owners by not going to games. No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Dan Snyder, no one was going to see Dan Snyder's team play. And the only reason he got out the paint was because he was stealing money from the other owners. It does not matter. The ticket sales, mostly irrelevant. No. I hate to say it, but it's true.
They could play the games on a sound stage and it would not materially change the profits of the owners.
60 years ago? Yeah, stick it to them. Now, no, doesn't matter. Fox and Disney already paid for it. Don't worry about that. So the deal, within the next 3 to 4 years, cap could go up crazy amounts. Also, the COVID restrictions, gone this year. No more of the COVID payoff stuff. It is all back to quote-unquote normal salary cap. So it might be even a little higher than expected this year. Certainly down the line, could really explode. If the Bengals wanted to pay these guys, gigantic, all-cap 72-point if, you backload every contract like crazy. And you say, hey, we're going to pay you nothing up front, but we're going to have you locked in for 5 years because that's the way you're going to get your money. And that could work. Again, the problem is it's Mike Brown and the Bengals, and they just refuse to ever do that. They would rather suck than pay guys, which outside from Burrow, which is crazy. I would not run a team that way. One other NFL sub-headline I would like to get to today.
Give it to us.
This isn't huge news in the grand scheme of things. The Carolina Panthers have re-signed backup quarterback Andy Dalton to a 2-year deal. That is the headline from NFL.com. And their writer, Nick Shook. A great name, Nick Shook. Also, Adam Schefter of ESPN has added on. It's an $8 million deal over 2 years with $6 million guaranteed. For reference, Mike White got $8 million from Miami in free agency. Andy Dalton is better than Mike White by a lot and got 2 years for $8 million and only $6 guaranteed. He is really tight with Bryce Young. They have a really good relationship by all accounts. So this is as much for Bryce as it is for Dalton. And look, if Bryce Young's breakout ends up not being the real deal, I think it is. But if it was a mirage, okay, you got Andy Dalton to step in with an improving team. So I think this is a great deal for Carolina. The reason this is relevant, you know who I would have loved to have added Andy Dalton as a backup quarterback had he hit the market? The Kansas City Chiefs. I think it is not at the top of the list of needs, obviously. Left tackle, probably right guard, cornerback, depth, couple other wide receiver, tight end depth, all more important. I don't want to see Carson Wentz in Kansas City again. I'm good with that on 1 year. And it's not just because of week 18, because he had no one to throw to anyway.
It's mostly because of week 18.
But it's largely because of week 18. Like, I don't need to see that again. A guy like Dalton, though, he so much fits, especially at that price, like what Matt Moore and Chad Henne, I almost called him John Hamm, what Chad Henne was before, like veteran, not going to screw up, not going to lose his mind on a play breakdown like Wentz, like just going to be steady backup, can win you a game if needs be in a pinch. I would have loved a guy like that in Kansas City. And I think that that's something, it can probably wait till June, but I think that's something Kansas City does have to address this offseason.
John Hamm is a good quarterback name. What actor has the best quarterback name?
Ooh, I mean, truthfully, Leonardo DiCaprio. Like Leonardo DiCaprio absolutely went to the Sugar Bowl with LSU.
No, that gives me like Giovanni Carmazzi vibes. That's like third stringer, 7th round draft pick vibes for me.
I mean, Bradley Cooper's a pretty
Cooper's a strong choice.
Prep school quarterback name.
Casey Affleck.
Casey Affleck was suspended for 1 quarter versus Rice for an incident at a bar.
Let's keep it 580 Sports Talk headlines moving from Major League Baseball.
Casey Affleck is the spiritual successor at quarterback to Steven Garcia.
Casey Affleck, like Maction legend.
Yes. Oh, yeah. My Tuesday nights filled with Casey Affleck.
Put a pin in this. We're doing this segment in the summer, I swear to God. From MLB.com, no deal reached between Vlad Jr. Blue Jays on extension. So 25-year-old star Vladimir Guerrero Jr. gave the Toronto Blue Jays a deadline. It was Tuesday. We come up with a contract extension, or I play out the season and I go to free agency. Blue Jays and Guerrero did not agree to a contract. Guerrero's quote, they expressed what they had. I expressed what I had. I'm here and we didn't get an agreement. Now they're going to have to compete with 29 more teams. Guerrero has expressed his desire to stay with Toronto, and he wants to be in Toronto, but understands it's a business. Guerrero told media today that the Blue Jays never got close to the number that he was looking for, while the front office for the Blue Jays, including general manager Ross Atkins and club president Mark Shapiro, said that they felt like they stretched beyond their own valuation and would have set a franchise record in what they were willing to give Guerrero Jr. right now. Obviously, both sides are at an impasse. The Blue Jays have a very, very high payroll. They have wealthy ownership. Rogers Communications, pretty big deal up there in the Great White North. They got a lot of money. They could be a financial titan. You always hear about them being in on, they were in on Shohei Ohtani. They were in on Roki Sasaki. They were really interested in bringing in all these guys, and they never do. And now they're not going to spend on a 25-year-old star, a homegrown guy, beloved by the fans, that has a chance to be a generational hitter and an all-time great Blue Jay, and they're just going to let him go. They're just going to let him get to free agents.
How much of this do you think was Vlad betting on himself, so to speak? I'm not trying to bend over for Rogers of all companies. I'm not. But I do wonder how much of this was the belief that they will not be able to match what I can get next year because I'm going to have a great year. As much talk as there was that he was not good for stretches of last season, he's been in the league 6 years and has 4 All-Star appearances. Like, it is a really good player.
He finished 6th in MVP voting last year. Really kind of a bounce back. He'd gone the wrong way since his breakout 2021 season.
Maybe I'm thinking of 23 then.
Yeah. 2021, he hit 48 home runs. He was 2nd in MVP voting. 22 and 23 were gradual steps in the wrong direction. He was just kind of average in 2023. 2024, he broke back out again. 30 home runs, batted .323, career high batting average. He's a stud. He's an absolute stud, and he's a lineup anchor. He's only 25 years old. He's a native of Canada because he's born there while his dad was playing for the Expos. Like, he wants to be there. Make it happen. Just write him a blank check. I don't understand. These owners continue to cry poor, and they're going to do it all the way up until they take a Major League Baseball season away from you. I just want everybody to be prepared. 2027, find something else to do in the summer, because the owners are going to lock the players out, and they're going to want a salary cap, and the players aren't going to give it to them, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't give it to them, and we're not going to have baseball in 2027. I'm just be prepared for that outcome. That is where it is increasingly clear that the owners want to take this sport. They want a salary cap because they don't want to spend their own money. They're more concerned with their balance sheets and putting a competitive team on the field, and they're going to beg for a salary cap in the new CBA negotiations. And the players, just like in 1994, they're not going to bend over. They're not going to give way. They're going to say no. And we're not going to have baseball in 2027. We are either headed towards an extremely long lockout or no season at all in 2027. I really feel that way. I hate that I feel that way, but I feel that way.
While we're putting a pin in this, can you take a note that I would like to get your thoughts on the future of baseball economics at some point? Because I think the salary cap thing is difficult because the players will never agree to it. But I think this is one instance where we always talk about how the fans in labor disputes in sports almost always side with the owners over the players. Because as a fan, I work 40 hours a week. I have a hard job. I want to go home and watch my team play baseball. Like, I don't really care about what they're making because they make a lot more than me. Right or wrong, that's off of the discussion, right? I think the salary cap is a more complex version of that because it's, again, like, no, you want to side with the players. Like, wouldn't you in that spot, wouldn't you want more money? Yes, but I do genuinely think that if you capped the league somehow, you end up with a more competitive outlook than what we have right now. You don't have Bob Nutting deciding to just spend like $12 on payroll. I think it's really complex. I'd like to know your thoughts on it, but we have to get into a commercial break in the next 3 minutes. So I'm not sure we have time for it right now, but I would like to discuss it because I think it's fascinating. I also agree with you. I think we will have a lockout. Which is going to suck. It's going to be so sad. I hope y'all like independent ball. Real quick, one more headline from me before we get to the commercial break. By the way, the Dodgers are going to sign Vlad for $1 billion, and he will pay him $3 upfront. Not $3 million, $3.
I'm hearing the Mets or the Red Sox, but anyway.
See the Red Sox. I could see that. All right, one more quick one for me. This is the headline from Defector. Abysmal Kevin Hart special interrupted by sporadic basketball. This is from the MLB, the NBA All-Star festivities this weekend.
A lot of Kevin Hart.
A weird send-off to Inside the NBA, which, like, cool. I'm glad those guys got some love, but Inside the NBA is not going anywhere, remember? Because they said they're going to be back on ESPN starting next season. So I don't really understand that either. The format, I understand they wanted to change it, do something different. I don't hate that, but I also don't really love it. Here's my beef with the All-Star game. I did not know. Like, I've told you for years, I think All-Star games are dumb because everyone has cable or TikTok or Twitter or whatever.
They are a bit antiquated as a concept. Yes.
I didn't know so many people were so passionate. Like, we have to save NBA All-Star. Why? Guys, it's an exhibition. It's a scrimmage. I think the NBA's biggest mistake has been trying to make it more than it is. Well, guys don't want to play in it. Okay, well then fine. Then they can opt out and bring Zach LaVine can come and play this year. Like, so what? It's a scrimmage.
Yeah.
Let it be what it is. That's my beef with
this whole thing about, well, nowadays they don't try hard in the All-Star game. They never tried hard in the All-Star game, man. It's an exhibition game. They're not going to play it like Game 7 of the NBA Finals. They never are. There is nothing you can do to increase the competition to a level that is acceptable to you if that's what you're in this for. If you're in this for the competition, it's an exhibition game. Let them have some fun. Don't turn it into a Kevin Hart stand-up special with, like, featuring Mr. Beast. Like, who wanted that? Who wanted any of that?
No, I don't. I think the NBA has gone. We talk about how they've done this international marketing and they have such a young demographic and all this stuff. I think they've steered way too far into that skid. Like, no one who actually watched, because, by the way, the people you're trying to target with Mr. Beast showing up at the All-Star game,
they're not sports fans.
Absolutely are not sports fans. They are not watching the full All-Star festivities, and they have a bedtime. Like, those people aren't watching All-Star weekend. They're just not. And that is the problem, I think, is that you're trying to make this something that it isn't. Well, we want competition. We want people to care about it. Why? But I guess it's for ads. I guess it's ad money. It's ad dollars.
Sell advertising. Adam Silver's got to find a way to sell advertising for this thing, and to do so, it has to remain viable as an entertainment product. I'm not ever opposed to trying new things, but it's pretty clear that what they tried on Sunday wasn't it, because even people who were inclined to enjoy basketball or the NBA or All-Star Weekend were not particularly fond of what they saw on Sunday. There's also this from the 785 on the text line. The dunk contest has become a joke. Why? Because a G Leaguer has won it 3 straight years?
Oh, well, and there's the thing, too. So many guys don't want to, like, because they might get embarrassed and lose, or they just don't want to lose. Like, there's no, I do think that's something that once upon a time guys really did care about. Like, when Jordan and Dominique were doing it and Spud Webb, like, you're literally breaking barriers. Like, people hadn't seen this stuff before. Now, I mean, no one wants to do it because they don't want to get hurt, or they don't want to try or travel or whatever. They don't want to get embarrassed, because Mac McClung's really good at this. Like, this is the thing he was put on earth to do. Yeah. Play basketball at a high level? I mean, kind of, but dunk. Yeah, put on earth to do fun dunks, to jump over stuff and do crazy dunks and win this contest. That is Mac McClung's reason for being. Yeah. And congratulations to him. He has made more dunks in the dunk contest than he has made field goals in NBA games. I just don't think that you're you're chasing an end result that doesn't exist. Right. It's strange. I think sports, your buddy Andrew Hammond, who's a sports editor down in Alabama, I thought had a really great take on this on Blue Sky this weekend, that a lot of pro sports leagues are kind of missing the point, and it's less about the sports now, and it's more about the actual entertainment, like the spectacle of it. I think the NBA is the biggest guilty party in that degree. Like, hey, man, sometimes I just want to watch a basketball game. Yeah. Like, I don't need other stuff. I just want to watch some hoop. It can just be basketball. Oh, no, nobody's guarding Steph Curry when he's shooting from half court. He's shooting from half court, and it's going in. Just enjoy a cool thing. Like, it doesn't have to be something that it was never going to be in the first place. Yep. That's it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We'll talk a little NFL free agency on the other side of this break here on 580 Sports Talk. But first, a quick word from my friends at Great Life here in Topeka. You may have noticed, again, if you've looked out a window in the last 12 hours, conditions outside aren't really conducive to maybe getting that jog in or that run that you like to get in. And don't let that keep you from reaching your fitness goals. Become a Great Life member today. Take advantage of the 8 fitness facilities all around the metro area. There's a Great Life facility near you if you live in Greater Topeka, and they have outstanding amenities, great places to work out, to pursue those fitness goals. You can't get a run in, the texture's not great on the snow. Fine, go to one of the Great Life workout facilities, get on the treadmill, get on the exercise bike, get a lift in, get your swole on, get a workout at Great Life. And go to greatlifetopeka.com for more information on how to become a member today. We're back after this on 580 Sports Talk.
537 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan Brendan with you. Matt Bowen has ranked the top 50 NFL free agents available this coming off season. 3 of them are erstwhile Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe still Kansas City Chiefs. We'll see how the offseason unfolds. But 3 of them suited up for the Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. How about we put it that way? Including the number 2 free agent on the board, Trey Smith. Man, you really get a picture for how grim this free agent class is when you scroll down the list and you see that, like, the 4th best free agent available is DJ Reed. And I like DJ Reed a lot. K-Stater, he's had a very good NFL career. That's the 4th best free agent on the market this season. It doesn't speak particularly highly for the free agent class. Anyhow, what Matt Bowen wrote today was the best fit for all 50 players in the top 50 list, and Trey Smith's best fit is the Chicago Bears. At this point, it's a meme. Like, I'm sure the Photoshops are already done of Trey Smith in a Bears uniform. That almost seems too obvious, the fit there between Smith and the Bears. I would be pretty surprised if he didn't go to Chicago, if it does end up leaving Kansas City. 2 other Chiefs on the list. One of them at number 23, Nick Bolton. Best team fit for Nick Bolton, the Denver Broncos. Broncos haven't had a good linebacker since, like, Danny Trevathan. It's been a really long time since they've had, like, plus linebacker play. Bolton, I do think, would be the best linebacker they've had since in about a decade.
Yeah.
I just can't.
No Josie Jewell love?
Josie Jewell is, like, slower than erosion. Like, I cannot believe that guy is still in the league. It's unbelievable. I don't think Nick Bolton's leaving Kansas City. I think that if somebody else tried to take Nick Bolton, like, put him in a car and drive him out of Kansas City, Steve Spagnuolo would lie down on the road in front of the vehicle.
I will say I get the idea with Denver because I think for someone who is limited athletically in terms of, quickness or lateral mobility, I actually do think a coach like Vance Joseph, who is very creative, very much like Spags is probably the type of guy who can get the most out of him. Like, I can't see Nick Bolton playing for Vic Fangio, for example. Not that Fangio is not creative, but, like, I just don't think that makes a lot of sense in terms of fit, in terms of scheme and stuff like that. For a Vance Joseph team and some of the defenses he's coordinated that have been pretty good despite not having much talent, I think a guy like Bolton would make a lot of sense. That being said, I'm in agreement with you. I do think he will stay in Kansas City. I think he's too much of a Spags guy.
I also think Justin Reed is going to stay in Kansas City. I think they will get... Reed, to me, is the kind of player that you give a 3rd contract to for, 2-3 additional seasons. I think Reed played at a high level in 2024. According to Matt Bowen, best fit for Reed is the New York Jets under their new head coach, Aaron Glenn, a Jets defense that's in need of playmakers.
Yeah, I get that.
But I think you can do Reed on something that is fairly team-friendly for the next 3 years. Maybe
probably ends up being like 2 and an option, maybe even 1 that's fully guaranteed.
It might look like the back end of the Tyrann Mathieu deal. That wouldn't surprise me if it looks like the tail end of that contract. Although I think Reed will perform at a higher level on his 3rd contract than Tyrann Mathieu did.
Yeah, the age thing is the big question because, and I wanted to double check this. I think Mathieu played his age 29 season with the Chiefs in 2021. When is his birthday? May 13th. So yeah, he turned 29, or he spent his whole age 29 season in Kansas City, and the Chiefs never even made a real offer for him to come back because they said, nah, your safeties, they drop off. Justin Reed today is 28 years old and 3 days. His birthday was on Saturday. So he's just 28. I mean, that's noticeably, it's essentially 2 full football years younger than Honey Badger was when the Chiefs let him walk. I would keep Reed. I like Justin Reed.
Yeah.
I think he's a good player. Not a perfect safety, but I think he's a good player. I would try to find a way to keep him around.
I think there's a deal that can be struck that makes sense, especially if Trey Smith doesn't come back.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's plenty of room to do both Bolton and Reed contracts. There's only one player on this entire top 50 listed as having the Chiefs be their best fit, and it's the number 20 ranked player on this list, Zach Martin. who's probably going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he's a legend.
One of the great guards in NFL history. The thought process here is that he would be a cheaper Trey Smith replacement. Well, there's a reason that a future Hall of Famer would be cheaper than Trey Smith on the open market. He's older and breaking down. And I don't think you can do, like, if the whole idea behind the Chiefs moving forward is we want to have an offensive line we can rely on. We maybe need to get younger, but we need to be more reliable up front. I don't think you go and pay a guy who only played 10 games last year and say that's our Trey Smith replacement,
who's had a couple major injuries. Yeah, I don't like that, to be completely honest with you. And I know it's always a risk with the draft or with other free agents, whatever, replacing in-house. Although, I mean, they drafted Hansen and Norsdad. I would imagine those two guys will at least get a look in training camp and in mini camp this coming year. I don't think that's a particularly good. Like, I get the vision, what Matt Bowen of ESPN is going for, but I don't think that one makes a lot of sense. Can we go back to Justin Reed for 1 second?
Yes, we can.
Here's the problem with an affordable deal for Justin Reed. I think he is by far the best safety available in free agency. It's not quite as shallow in the free agent pool at safety as it is in some positions, like wide receiver. Now that Higgins is getting the tag, it is grisly at the wide receiver room.
The safeties above him on Matt Bowen's list, for the record, are Javon Holland, Trevon Moehrig, Talanoa Hufanga, who I've always really liked, but has been banged up the last couple of years, and Cameron Bynum.
See, and I like Hufanga, but if you need a guy to be your best safety, like your guy who can play center field and cover a little bit more, can kind of do everything, I'd rather have Reed than Hufanga. Now, if I need a safety who's going to play closer to the line, play in the box, I want Hufanga because I think he's a really good player. I think he's a better downhill player. Reed, I would prefer more in space. Now, I really like Javon Holland, who's been playing for the Dolphins. He had a down year. He's only 25. He's an unrestricted free agent. I think he'll get quite a payday, but he also had a down year. So I don't know exactly what that'll look like. He's dealt with some injury stuff too. Justin Simmons is available. I like Justin Simmons, but it took him forever to get signed this year. And he's 31. Justin Reed, right at 28 years old, experienced winner, one of the smartest guys in the league. He's going to be on TV forever after he is done, by the way. We will never see the end of Justin Reed. That dude is such a good, like, media personality. I'm going to miss that in Kansas City if he goes elsewhere. But I just think, like, after that, I mean, I like Jeremy Chin. He's a nice player, but I think he's kind of a specialist. Xavier Woods is fine. He's almost 30. He'll be 30 when next season kicks off. I think I would rather take Reed over anyone other than Javon Holland in free agency. And if there are a lot of teams out there that need safety help, that might price the Chiefs out. If the Chiefs can make it worth their while and maybe the market doesn't boom, I would love him back in Kansas City. I just worry that if they're trying to go like, hey, let's do, 2 to 3 year deal, guarantees are up in 2 years, take you up to 30. I just wonder if they might get outbid for something like that.
Could very well happen.
Good player. I like Reed a lot.
I do too. I think the Chiefs, I think they'd really miss him. I like Jaden Hicks as much as the next person. Thought we saw some really promising things from him last year. I thought Brian Cook was just okay.
Yeah, honestly, this coming for the next 2 seasons, if you were to tell me, hey, well, Brian Cook's deal's coming up next year. He's only got 1 more year under contract.
Yeah.
Because he was part of that 22 class. If you're telling me, hey, next 2 years, what do you want your receiver or your safety room to look like? You either get Cook or Reed and you get Jaden Hicks. I'd rather have Reed and Hicks.
Yeah, I think I would too. I think you're right on the money there. We'll take a timeout, come back, do a real quick preview of tonight's KU-BYU game on 580 Sports Talk. 549 on 580 Sports Talk. Tonight, 8 o'clock, Marriott Center in Provo. KU, the 23rd ranked team in the country, taking on BYU, trying not to have the same fate as K-State that went 0-4 Utah over the weekend. KU trying to split the trip through the Beehive State. They are 3-point underdogs, according to our friends at Prairie Band Sportsbook at Prairie Band Casino and Resort in Mayetta. Bart Torvik has BYU favored by 2. I think the Saturday night loss to Utah was sort of the last straw for me in watching this KU team and just not expecting it to be what we thought it could be. Whatever we thought that this KU team could be, it just isn't. And I've talked about this on the show before, and it was a show where you weren't in, Brendan, so I don't think I got to go back and forth with you on this.
Must have been a great episode.
Huge ratings. You wouldn't believe the ratings. I think at the end of the day, this comes down to teams take on the personalities of their best players, and Hunter Dickinson is just not the kind of guy who is going to put a team on his ample shoulders. I do not think that he is the leader that you need your best player to be.
When did you say this came up? A couple weeks ago?
Yeah, it would have been a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's probably the week I was off. I would say that at that point, even just 2 weeks ago, I probably would have disagreed with you. I've been a big Hunter Dickinson supporter. I still think he's a good basketball player.
Oh, no, I'm not dismissing his talent as a basketball player. I just think that when the going gets tough.
I think you're right. I think you're right. You know, you go back to even teams that have been a little disappointing in recent years. Like, okay, let's go back 2 seasons ago. That Jalen Wilson team. Mentioned them talking to Michael a little bit earlier. That team probably would have found a way to dig out a couple of these close losses this season or a couple of these collapses because Jalen Wilson was a friggin' dog. Yeah. I have so much respect for him as a player and as a person. He would not let them lose some games that, frankly, that team was not talented enough to win most of the time.
Right.
And that was before McCullough had his weird injury stuff, too. And Grady Dick was fiery. Like, they had a little bit more of that. Hunter ain't that guy. You know, national championship team, obviously, no one's going to mess with Christian Brown. Like, there was... That
team, they were mentality monsters.
They were. And that's why they won a national title. Yeah. Because they were not... You know, Ochai was great, CB was great, Jalen was great, but that... David McCormick should have been the MVP of the Final Four, and David McCormick... It was a refusal... Is a fine guy.
A refusal to accept losing that I just don't see with Hunter Dickinson. Like,
yeah, it's tough, don't. But I think you're right about that. And I think it's rubbed off on other guys. And I think the lack of fit for Storr, certainly, and unfortunately at this point, probably for Rylan Griffin, too. I think that's really contributed to it, too. I think this is kind of a perfect storm of crap. And I think, again, not having NBA talent on this team hurts, too. There's no denying that.
I don't know that I'd call it the worst team in the Bill Self era, and frankly, it's too early to jump to that conclusion anyway. There's still some season left to be played, but one of the most disappointing of the era, Yep. There's no question about that. Can they win tonight?
Probably not.
Yeah,
they can, but probably not. 81-71 BYU is my pick.
Not really optimistic either. We'll take a timeout, come back with the final word on 580 Sports Talk. Final word time. Wrapping up and walking off this Tuesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, give me your final word.
Final word, stay warm out there. It is snowy and relatively deep. I don't know what the plowing situation is, but it is cold as hell. And it is only going, ironically, it is only going to continue to get colder. I think the low is still supposed to be like -11 between Wednesday and Thursday. So stay warm. Normally, I'd say great time to cuddle up next to the fire with a blanket on with KU basketball, but they're ice cold as well. So maybe not the best night for that.
My final word, we will end where we began with condolences to the friends and family of the great Greg Sharpe, who lost his battle with cancer last Friday, though it does not feel appropriate to say that he lost it because he fought it like hell, and he got into the broadcast booth for this past season of Nebraska football as the voice of the Huskers. It's not right to say that he lost that battle. It's more appropriate to say that he fought it like a warrior. And I know that Greg Sharpe is still so special to so many of you who listen to this program, who have listened to this program since he was the host of it, who've listened to 580 WIBW since he was on these airwaves, since he was the voice of the K-State Wildcats. We're keenly aware here of the legacy of people like Greg Sharpe, and we hope that we do that legacy proud every time we open up the mics every day. But instead of aspiring to be the kind of broadcaster Greg Sharpe was, I hope I'm the kind of man that Greg Sharpe was. I hope I'm the kind of person that leaves behind people who say the things about Greg Sharpe, the person, that they'll say that about me someday. So that's where I will leave it again with our thoughts and our prayers with the Sharpe family, his wife, Amy, his 3 daughters, everybody who knew and loved Greg Sharpe. Rest in peace. We will have more 580 Sports Talk coming your way tomorrow from 3 until 6. Until then, for Brendan Dworzinski, I'm Dan Lucero. I double-checked and everything. And this is 580 Sports Talk. Good night.